Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Football Palestine Extra, live from Amman, Jordan, where the weather has taken a turn. It was quite warm a couple of days ago. We're talking high 20s even during the day, and it is rained. Wind has picked up. It is going to continue like this till tomorrow. And the reason why we're doing this kind of impromptu episode is this episode, we're going to preview tomorrow's match between Palestine and Jordan at the Amman International Stadium. As always, I want to thank my premium subscribers who help make all my content possible. We had a couple of new ones come in over the past couple of days, so super appreciative of that. As always, if you are a premium subscriber, you'll be able to see this video in its entirety, all the interviews we've done with national team players, coaches, past and present, and you help me keep the light on. So if you're not a premium subscriber, consider becoming one. So without further ado, let me kind of tell you what I've been up to the past couple of days since I arrived here in Jordan, and what I think the keys to the match will be tomorrow. um, so yeah, other than the weather, which I don't think will be a factor, although that did come up in the press conference today, I don't think it'll be a factor. Listen, it might dip to the single digits Celsius, uh, but listen, I think that's completely normal. It might rain a little bit, but we're not talking anything torrential. So leave that aside. I think it's a very, very interesting matchup. So, I wrote about this in the preview piece, which you can read on the website now. There is a historical element for sure. But then there's a question of form. And then there's also the question of, does history really matter in international football? And I think I've sort of reached the conclusion that it really doesn't. Historical matchups, great for when two clubs face each other, because if they stay in the same division, you're going to play each other home at least twice, home and away in the league, maybe you meet in the cup. And then you can sort of see, what does that mean, right? If one team has won the last, 10 matchups or has undefeated in 10 years, 20 years, then it means something. You have a real, broad sample size. International football, I mean, official matchups, we're talking about 11 matches. 11 matches dating back to 1998. That's not a huge sample size. That involves, very different groups of players under very different circumstances that really, they don't have much to do with this core of players. A lot of people are going to try and point to certain results. And I think certain, at least the recent results, if you look at them, it doesn't, there are reasons why Palestine lost the last two matchups, and then before that they had drawn at the Asian Cup 0-0. There are like reasons. Some of those issues are still going to be very relevant, but many of them are going to be quite irrelevant to this matchup. So, my conclusion is it doesn't really matter. And what we really need to see or think about is, how do these two teams match up with one another? And, there I think we have a very clear idea of how Jordan wants to play, how they're going to play. The personnel, I think, is quite straightforward. But the question really is, how is Palestine going to react to that? And the question really is, for any team in this group, is, well, how do you stop them, right? How do you stop them while still maintaining something of a threat in attack? I think the blueprint was what Qatar did at the Asian Cup. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So let me kind of tell you what has happened thus far since the national team arrived here on the 17th of March. It's the 19th day, early hours of the 20th. So we're well into the match day. The team had really organized everything to spend some time in Qatar with the players that were released early by their clubs, plus any of the players that were, in Qatar, because that's where they live and play. And they used that to create a small mini camp. They played one friendly against a local club. They won 5-0. Were able to communicate their ideas. Overall, the vibe in the camp is quite positive. The coaching staff has a very clear idea of what they want from the players. They're all on the same page. And I think that has allowed the players to buy in very, very quickly. So, we'll see what that looks like on the pitch. But first impressions, I think it's quite good from what I've seen. Training, they look sharp. Uh, they look like they know what they're going to do. Listen, as a journalist, you can only really see 15 minutes of the training, then they kick you out. So you're depending a lot of body language on, what people tell you here and there, trying to pick back from what training looked like under the previous coaching staff. But I would say vibes are pretty good. Everything I'm hearing from my sources trends positively. There are no outstanding issues. Look, I said this before, and I'll say it again. That 26-man squad that was put together makes total sense. They are made up of players that are playing, that are in form, and that have either played well for the national team before, played well for the Olympic team before, and if they're not one of the two, then have definitely exhibited really good form with their clubs if they sort of came, were one of these new recruits. As far as the new recruits are concerned, really, really stellar reviews from players I've been talking to, players who've been with the national team now, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Really like what they see. That goes for Adam Kayed, that goes for Asad Hamlawi, even the Olympic team players. Some of them weren't really on the radar of the more senior players. Hamid Hamdan, really stellar reviews. Labris, stellar reviews. Just really, really good all around. And I think that the general attitude and the mood in the camp has been lifted. So we could see a new manager bounce. And I don't think it's a superficial new manager bounce. I think from what I've seen, this isn't, the decision to sack Makram Daboub or ask for his resignation or what have you, whatever you want to term it, can be justified now. A lot of times people don't want to change horses in midstream. It's like, oh, you're going to mess things up. You're bringing in new staff. There's not enough time for them to communicate their ideas, and maybe you just make a bad problem into a bigger, badder problem. But that's not the case here. So I think the idea of getting new ideas in by changing the manager is one that can be vindicated so far from what I've seen. Now, all of that kind of comes down to what they do on the pitch tomorrow and against Iraq on Tuesday. And I think this team knows what they want to do. I don't really have any insight into the game plan